said, this is the tale of the living dead. I'm gonna make it a lullaby. Don't be scared, no, the dead don't die.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! Oh, in the name of God! Now I know what it feels like to be God! Oh.
Hello, this is the President. Hello, this is the President of the United States. Who is this? Is it you again?
Look behind you.
This is my private line. How did you get through?
They're everywhere. All the time. We see them every day. But you have to look behind you.
There is nothing behind me. How did you get this number?
The spaceman told me.
What spaceman?
It doesn't matter. I'm telling you about monsters. Please, you must look behind you.
Young lady, there are no monsters in the Oval Office.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, give up, give up, give up, give up, give up.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Ground Zero coming to you live as always from Talk Media Network, stations coast to coast. Also, TalkStream Live is out there keeping us linked up to many of those radio stations across the country. And for shows and information that you can peruse on your own time, you just go to aftermath.media. We have subscription prices as low as $7 to get the package to go in and find documents and videos and all kinds of great things. Just go to aftermath.media. That's aftermath.media. It supports the show, and we're very grateful for the supporters that are out there that support this type of radio that will keep it going, even if they decide they want to just take things down and they want to go after people. I don't know if I'm on their list, but a lot of people seem to think so. I haven't been told yet. I haven't gotten the memo. But watching the news today and seeing what happened at Mar-a-Lago today and thinking, regardless of what you think of what they're doing or who they're doing it to, it's not right. Not in this country. It's not not right, but I'm not doing this as a show tonight. I'm sorry. I just can't comment on this because it's just it's happening right now. All I can tell you is that today is a time of unprecedented official lies about everything. Everything. You're going to have to start using discernment, people. You can't rely on the mainstream. I'm sorry. You just can't. I mean, look, we're getting told lies about everything from hot wars, cold wars, class wars of the rich against the poor, medical wars of international elites against everybody. It just seems to be a daily electronic digital barrage meant to pound people into the deepest despair, pound them into compliance. I mean, these lies that have been sown, this vast sense of bewilderment, and it's intended to do this. It's intended to confuse. It's intended to flummox and bewilder. I mean, if you want to know what's up, all you have to do is do what I do. It's called the scroll of doom every morning. Check your cell phone, head down the primrose path to unreality, and this is how it is every day. I used to enjoy, and I do it out of habit. That's the problem, is I do it out of habit. It's like when you smoke. Oh, I'm just doing it out of habit. I don't like smoking. It's like I don't like scrolling my phone. Maybe I'll get over it one day and not do it anymore. But like I say, you check the cell phone, takes you down that primrose path of unreality, hyper-reality. I mean, it's very difficult for any conventional people to admit that the life that they've known, the life that we have known as Americans, is slowly disappearing while, other people are dwaddling in fantasy land. They're believing the propaganda. They're believing the propaganda of those in charge. And to live in this country, to live in the USA, is to live in Neverland. It's Neverland for, I mean, I see it Neverland because no one ever has to be alone. They don't have to grow up, and they'll always be coddled to death. That's what it is anymore. Oh, we can't leave these people alone because they're victims. We can't let them do this because they're victims. You don't have to grow up. You don't have to say you're a girl or a boy. You don't have to do anything. No. And you're going to be coddled and taken care of because we care. And that's it. It's fine if you like that. That's just it just infantilizes people. It's the infantilization of this country we live in. I mean, to quote Leonard Cohen, everybody knows that the boat is leaking. Everybody knows the captain lied. Everybody got this broken feeling like their father or their dog just, I just thought, I just got to sing it. I can't just say it. Everybody knows that the boat is leaking. Everybody knows that the captain lied. Everybody got this broken feeling like their father or dog just died. There you go. I'm not Leonard Cohen, but hey, it's easier to do it that way. It's that unreality of hearing every damn day that the air you breathe, the food you eat, and even the heat of the sunshine is going to kill you off. And that's the thing. We all know that everything dies. We all know that everyone dies eventually. The technocrats want it. They want it every day, and they want it on the news every day for you. And they want to replace all of us with robots and enhanced transhuman puppets. We all have to deal with that awkward question of what to do with our bodies when it's no longer needed by us, or when you don't need your body anymore. What are you going to do with it? Well, when you're taking up space and drawing flies, I'm sure many of your loved ones think that a traditional way of taking care of your body is appropriate. There's always the idea of a casket, right? A traditional viewing where you are literally turned into a preserved wax figure with embalming fluid, and then you're on display at a funeral home. Then comes the church service, the hearse driving your corpse to the cemetery, and then you get thrown into the ground. Done. There's some people, though, that avoid all that by taking the body to a crematory, where you're wrapped up in a large baggie, stuffed into a cardboard box, and then baked at 1,800 degrees till you're sizzling, till your bones are left, and they do the pulverizing thing. They pulverize your bones. I know, it's creepy. Creepier said than done. Because you reduce your basic elements, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And practiced in many ancient civilizations. The idea of cremation, the idea of burning the body. And now what? We got compost. Turning the body into trash, turning the body into mulch, turning the body into stuff you like effluent you throw on a damn garden. I mean, that's the choices you have, right, of what to do when you die. And of course, they want to sometimes they have these ideas, these new experiments that will prolong life, but they're very ugly, scary, and creepy. They're macabre. They're like the darkest of nightmares. And I've been reading lately in a lot of health journals that they've found ways to reanimate bodies, finding ways to reanimate pigs. They find ways to make use of dead spiders by blowing air through their bodies and making them like clamps. It's like when we were kids, we used to, play with ants. We used to burn anthills, or we used to pull wings off flies or do crazy things like that. But this is another way the scientists play with dead things. It's getting creepy. It's getting to be Frankensteinish, if that's a word, Frankensteinish. 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back. You're listening to Ground Zero. I'm Clyde Lewis. Numbers to call tonight, 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. So, talking about death, it seems that that's on everybody's minds, because that's what works to get people to get injections or to get vaccines or whatever. And it gets people motivated to, talk about things like monkeypox. And I was discussing this about what you do with the body once you find out that you're doomed. What are you going to do with yourself? You can't get life insurance. You can't get it. You have to make plans for either putting your putting your body in a casket or cremation. Those are the only things I can think of. And I remember back when I was a kid, I thought about how god awful it would be to be cremated, and because I thought, what if death is just like, you feel everything, but your just eyes are closed and no one knows, or you don't feel everything, and it's creepy thoughts, like back when you were buried alive. Remember that movie? I remember telling someone I knew that was in church. I said, well, I'm thinking that cremation probably would be a great idea. It's cheaper. And he said, well, I wouldn't do that. I said, why not? He said, well, maybe God requires you to find your body and reanimate it in the resurrection. And how hard would that be if you were just, if you're reduced down to a fine powder, even a skeleton, or don't have a frame or whatever? And I thought, pretty dark conversation, It's like, especially if you're one of the unfortunate people to die in an explosion or a plane crash or some other method where your body parts are spread for miles. You're not going to be able to pick up your body in a resurrection. So the whole idea of reanimating your corpse during the first resurrection sounds spooky to me. It's like Night of the Living Dead. But, of course, that's what it is when you twist things and kind of manipulate them, you make them horrific. It's how it works. I mean, I'm sure that back when Mary Shelley, when she was writing Frankenstein, I'm sure she was thinking a lot about that. I think she thought a lot about, what happens when man gets to the point where he knows how to animate a corpse through electricity and other things. Scientists throughout history have been less than scrupulous in their efforts to restore life to dead bodies. And, well, for example, around 1800, there was this guy by the name of Giovanni Aldini. He was a physicist. He was from Italy. And he performed a series of experiments in which he electrically stimulated the heads and trunks of cows, horses, sheep, and dogs. Now, this wasn't science. Okay, it didn't seem like it. It wasn't much of a science at the time to stimulate the heads of cows and horses and sheep and dogs, but it was a form of spectacle. They did it in a sideshow. They did it on the sideshow circuit. The carnivals would come to town, and you'd be treated to what is called electric performance art. And what they do is they take the dead bodies of animals, and they would create a theatrical display of electrically manipulated bodies. And they even had a human body in one of the tours. Some guy that witnessed one of Aldini's performances said in a book that what they did is they put electrodes on the bodies of these animals, and on this, there was a criminal, I guess, that they had, a guy who was on death row, and he died, and they used his body, and they said that they could make the jaws open, the teeth chatter, the eyes roll in their sockets. And if reason did not stop the fired imagination, one would almost believe that the corpse is suffering and alive again. That's how macabre this is. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine thinking about, here you have a dead body, and you're this Italian physicist, and you're at this sideshow, because they have the sideshows, like where the bearded ladies would be, and they say, come see the theatrical display of animating a corpse using electrodes. And you see the mouth open of a human, the eyes roll back into their heads, and they're dancing. They're dancing with their eyes rolled back in their heads like puppets. And I was reading about this Aldini guy, and he did a lot of cruel and sick experiments on people. For example, he would do electronic experiments on decapitated arms and legs. He'd go to local hospitals and he'd get the amputated, legs and arms. And so what he did is he took his show on the road and he gave these demonstrations in London. He found a hanged criminal and he directed current between the corpse's mouth and ear. And when he did that, the mouth convulsed and then the left eye opened. And then he applied electricity to the south end of the body, the rectum, right? And he would fire the electrical current through that end of the body. And there were such violent muscular contractions, it gave the appearance that this hanged criminal was dancing. So you have this dance of the dead, this dance macabre going on where it's being done through electrodes, using electrodes to make the body dance. Now, Mary Shelley was 5 years old in 1803 when Aldini electrified corpses for the sideshow. And back when he animated the hanged criminal George Forrester, Shelley had heard about Aldini's work from her friend. It was a guy named Sir Humphrey Davy, and she told Shelley about how Aldini would use deceased human bodies. He would make them dance. Then he moved on to decapitated kittens, had them jumping around. I mean, this is insane. This is insane science. Then Davy continued to write about the experiment in which a headless kitten's spinal cord was replaced with a zinc and silver battery to make it dance. And so this is why Mary Shelley thought in her lifetime that reanimation would be a real possibility in the near future. It was also rumored that Shelley's husband, Percy, dabbled in what is called galvanism, which is, of course, putting electricity or electric current through something. And so it's been said that he even tried to cure his sister's sores with electricity. Although she survived, he did experiments on the family cat. The family cat wasn't so lucky because the family cat was electrocuted. So, just take a moment while it's dark and close your eyes for that moment. And in your mind's eye, think of the nightmare of flesh puppets being animated by electric arcs. Dead cats, dead dogs, dead human criminals can dance when electric current is sent through their bodies. Can you imagine that? Lon Chaney is, many people know who Lon Chaney Jr. is. He played the Wolfman in the movie called Man-Made Monster. That was released in 1941, starred Lionel Atwill as well. And it's an amazing story of a man who can take a lot of electricity and he absorbs it. And there was a scientist who lost his mind. His name's Regas, and he was in the movie. And he once said, and this is what's really interesting, he said that 50 years ago, a man was mad to think of anesthesia. 40 years ago, the idea of operating on the brain was madness. Today, we hold a human heart in our hands and watch it beat. Who knows what tomorrow's madness may be? Well, tonight we're going to tell you what that madness is. And it's just as scary as taking an electrode and putting it into a human and making it dance. Dance of the Dead. 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. This is one of those dark rides. So if you're alone in the house and it's dark outside, or if you're dark in the house, or even your truck driving on the road, talking about a subject that certainly piqued my interest and had me a little terrified was the idea that scientists now at Yale University are able to revive pigs. And they're able to do it after they've been dead for hours. And they do it by some sort of a chemical process. And it reminded me of Giovanni Aldini's experiments back in the 1800s. And the reason why I know about them is because I'm a big horror movie fan. And I know that Mary Shelley, when she wrote Frankenstein, she was impressed by what is known as galvanism, and basically the field which involves electrically stimulating animals' muscles. That's called galvanism. And apparently Aldini, his uncle was Luigi Galvani, who made frogs' legs twitch by running electricity down the spinal cord to muscle via metal rods. Now, when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, that's how the story began, the idea of a pair of twitching frogs' legs. Shelley was inspired by the concept of galvanism, the idea that scientists could use electricity to stimulate or restart life. See, back then, electricity was a new and barely understood force when Galvani performed his experiments on dissected animals during the late 18th century. And so a lot of people, back then, it makes a lot of sense that people thought it might just be able to make creatures come alive after death. Galvani's nephew, Giovanni Aldini, the man who did the Aldini sideshow stuff, the physicist, he would shock dissected human corpses in pursuit of this hypothesis, and he'd do it in public. He could get a corpse of a criminal, and he would dissect it, and then he would put electric jolts through it. There was also reports that he would put electric jolts from the mouth, and it would cause the eyes to roll back into the head of the corpse, and the corpse would dance with an electrode in the rectum. It's creepy as hell. So only in one part of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein do we hear the word galvanism, and it's in a area where Dr. Frankenstein describes how a lecture on electricity caused him to throw away everything he knew about science. And of course, Shelley directly acknowledges galvanism as part of the inspiration for her novel, writing of her discussions with Lord Byron. She wrote, quote, "Perhaps a corpse would be reanimated. Galvanism had given token of such things. Perhaps the component parts of a creature might be manufactured, brought together, and endued with vital warmth, all because of electricity, all because of stimulation." Well, these days, of course, we don't have galvanism. Galvanism is denied, and they say that it doesn't bring about real knowledge. But the branch of science known as electrophysiology does examine how cells and tissues use electricity. The idea that a simple charge can bring to life what's dead goes all the way back to the times of Shelley's Frankenstein, during the original manuscript back in the 1800s. Yet the book that's inspired by frogs' legs twitching has been a staple now for over 200 years. And whenever we hear of mad science, whenever we hear scientists doing strange things, we call it mad science. We base it on the idea of the Frankenstein syndrome, or the Frankenstein fears. And like I said, if you take a moment and in your mind's eye think of the nightmarish image of flesh puppets being animated by electric arcs, seeing dancing criminals with their eyes rolled back into their head. And then, of course, Man-Made Monster, which I talked about. It was Lon Chaney's, I think, acting debut, Lon Chaney Jr., before he was the Wolfman. He was in a movie called Man-Made Monster, which is about a guy who calls himself Dynamo Dan, who's the electric man at a sideshow, And there's an accident. It begins with this tragic accident where a bus hits a high power line. And everybody on board dies except for this Lon Chaney character because he survives. He's surprisingly immune to a lot of electricity. And so this doctor, Dr. Paul Regas, played by Lionel at Will, keeps pumping him through a lot of electricity. And he wants to see if he's capable of making electrobiologically driven zombies. And of course, Dr. Lawrence, who is his compatriot, I guess you could call him, doesn't approve of this electric reanimation. And he says to him, you are mad. You should not do this. And Regas says, yes, I am mad. So was Archimedes, Galileo, Newton, Pasteur, Lister, and all the others who dared to dream 50 years ago. A man was mad to think of anesthesia. 40 years ago, the idea of operating on the brain was madness. Today, we hold a human heart in our hands and we watch it beat. Who knows what tomorrow's madness may be? Well, tomorrow's madness is this. Tomorrow's madness is uses for the dead, from cannibalism to making it into compost. There are shows that travel to museums showing bodies that have been plastinated. I don't know if you ever been to one of those plastinated shows? Oh my God, they're terrible. They're hideous. I was told to see a plastination show because my doctor wanted me to see what kidneys look like when they're cancerous, because I had cancer in my kidneys and he wanted me to get an operation. And I kept putting it off, and he says, go to one of these plastinated body shows at the museum. And so they had one where they take real human bodies. They release them to this guy who's a mortician who knows how to take the bodies, dry them out, and plastinate them. It's like they're really corpses. You're going into this museum exhibit of corpses. They are corpses that have been dried out and plastinated, and they look like stuffed trophies. And they show everything from these skin-looking type characters. It shows them in things like riding a bicycle or having sex. They even showed one with a titanium leg. I mean, it's just creepy. It's just the idea of plastinating a body, hoping that you'll never wind up being plastinated and put in a museum. It's just hideous. I don't know. Have you ever attended one of those plastination displays? They give you the creeps. 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back. What kind of diabolical wizardry is the animation of the dead? Sending electricity through the body, making it twitch, making it dance. Something wrong with that, right? Something terribly wrong. I mean, we've seen movies where we laugh out loud when a guy named Bernie Lomax dies in an off-the-wall black comedy about two buddies whose boss, Bernie, has been bumped off by gangsters, but whose death goes unrecognized the entire weekend because his beach friends decide to animate his body in clever ways, like a puppet. Weekend at Bernie's. Remember that movie? It was pretty funny. But the reality is the guys would be animating a bloated green corpse if it were reality, because the body wouldn't have been able to take it. The body would turn into this bloated, gaseous, green, pussy. Ugh. I remember there was this movie. I interviewed Bob Clark, who was the guy who did Black Christmas, because I did some, I did a B-movie fanzine. And Bob Clark, I interviewed him about a movie that I remember seeing the preview for, was too scared to see when I was a kid. It's called Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, which was billed as a comedy where an acting group plans to ritualize the digging up of Orville's corpse. I remember. Anybody remember Orville's corpse? Yeah, we're going to play with Orville's corpse. And they were dressing it up. They were making fun of it. They were doing all kinds of things. In fact, they were even inferring that they wanted to have sex with the thing. But that's the thing. I mean, this is the lesson. No one should play with dead things, because this leads to things like necrophilia and mad science. For no reason laid out in scientific literature, religious scripture, or your foulest nightmares, the mad scientists over at Rice University in Texas, they've decided to play with their dead insects. They discovered a way to turn dead spiders into a tiny gripping robot. And what they do is they take a syringe and they put it in the spider, I guess in the back end of the spider, and then they take it and push air through it, and they super glue the needle into the butt of this spider, and when they blow air into it, the legs open up. Like they've animated this dead spider. The legs open up, and they can clamp down on these small things, little transistors and stuff. And apparently playing with a dead spider like this, filling it full of air and having it like a clamp at an arcade. You know, you've played those clamp machines where the clamp comes down and takes a stuffed animal. Well, this is a spider attached to a hypodermic needle that has air pushing through it that makes the arms kick out because the spider's dead. So the arms kick out. They position the spider over a small thing, and then the spider clamps on, and they say that it's good for 1,000 uses. And even though you want the spider to be dead, he's not dead. He's animated. This animated spider. You know what they're calling it? Necrobiotic grippers. Animated dead spiders for the use in picking up small items. Can you imagine that? There was actually a video that was actually going viral on the internet, and you see this experiment. It's just, I can just see it in my mind right now. I can see the legs, like, you know how legs in spiders is. They stretch out, and they're long, and they're spindly, and they're really creepy, and you see them, and they like, and they look at you, and they like spring back, like, oh my God, I'm on guard. What are you going to do? You going to slap me? You going to swat me? You going to step on me? What are you going to do? And then sometimes they pop back at you. They pop at you, like, you know, and they jump from the wall, and they go and they hit you in the face, and they fall to the floor, and then you're like stomping along trying to kill the spider because it's terrifying. Well, imagine a dead spider, and it has a hypodermic needle super glued in its butt. Okay, super glue that thing right in there. And then fill the spider full of air, and his legs go, and then they take the spider and they position it over a small little transistor, small little computer, I don't know what you'd call it, a little component, tiny little component. And then the legs, they take the air and they put it back, and the legs clamp down tight onto this little thing, and then they lift it up like a claw machine that you'd see in a arcade with a little teddy bear or whatever. But this is a spider. Okay, the gripper, and they've been doing this since 2019. What happened is they found a dead spider curled up in a lab, and they were curious as to why spiders would curl up after they die. And then the scientists learned that the arachnids have what is effectively called a hydraulic pressure system that controls their limbs. So to create the spider gripper, researchers tapped into the internal valves of the spider's hydraulic chamber with a needle. They sealed it with super glue, and then they attached a handheld syringe to the other end of the needle, and then they delivered small amounts of air through the syringe. I don't think they want to put too much air in there, otherwise the spider will explode. So they don't want the spider to explode, so they just give a little bit of air, and then the legs go, and then they're able to pick up things. And the scientists found that the dead spiders could lift more than 130% of their own body weight, with at least one of the X-spiders lasting up to 1,000 open-close cycles. So they were able to get this thing to open and close 1,000 times before it wore out. So that's getting good use out of a dead spider, right? So it's like puppeteering. It's like puppeteering the spider, animating the dead, animating this dead spider to do things for its master. It's, I mean, it's a spider, a tiny spider. I mean, I don't know how you react to spiders, but, you know, I don't know if you know this or not, but anywhere within 300 feet of you, there's a spider. That's what I read somewhere. I read that you don't see them, but they're everywhere. They're everywhere in your home. They're everywhere where you are. You're near a spider. Now imagine if you look up onto your wall and you see this big, ugly black spider. It would be a brown recluse or a black spider, or a daddy long leg, and the spider ends up dying. Okay, because you spray it with something, it dies, and then you hook up some experimental way of blowing air into its hydraulic system of its legs, and you use it to pick things up with, like a grabber. But it's little things. It's like if you need to pick up little things, or you're tweaking and you have to tweak, little pieces of whatever with your spider. It's kind of funny. But anyway, it's funny and scary all at the same time. I say it's funny because it scares the hell out of me to think about this. Just like it scares the hell out of me to think of, the jumping corpses with electrodes going through them. It's like, isn't this like the closest thing we get to necrophilia? Playing with dead things, playing with spiders that are dead, playing with corpses and beheaded kitties, and these are nightmare things, right? This is everything a nightmare can be made of. I mean, it's just too weird for words. But there are more experiments that are going on that are just as mad and crazy as this one. The idea of using a spider, blowing air through it, and making it a grabber. And we'll talk about that coming up on Ground Zero. 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. Do you think that it's okay to be like putting electric jolts into frogs' legs and blowing air into a spider and using it for a tool? Or, I mean, it's like, isn't this like abusing the dead? Is it? Or am I wrong here? It just gives me the creeps. 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. I'm Clyde Lewis. The dead aren't dying. They're being used again. We'll be back with more. Don't go away. I'm Clyde Lewis. And this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. There are so many things that we did when we were kids that we look back and think, how gross and how scary were all of these things, because we weren't fully aware of what the impact would be if we did them, right? I remember dissecting a frog in class. That wasn't fun. We used to dissect pig embryos in class. That wasn't fun. But when we were even smaller kids, I mean, did you ever do weird things with insects when you were a kid? Come on, you got to admit you did, right? I mean, I don't know what you did with the insects, but I mean, I'm talking about something that's beyond the idea of putting a caterpillar in a bottle and watching it go from chrysalis to butterfly, okay? You know what I'm talking about. We had very, very clever things we did with cockroaches. When I lived in South America, the cockroaches were about as big as your thumb, maybe even bigger. And so those who had the nerve to do so would take white fingernail polish, and we paint numbers on these bugs, and we would run races through mazes that we'd create in our apartments. What was most scary is when they decided to fly, and they'd go, they'd sound like, one of those rainbows. They make weird noises when they, and it's scarier than that, okay? Make a snapping sound, an eerie snapping sound when they decided they didn't want to be in the maze anymore. There was a neighbor kid, of course, down the street, and he would experiment with ants. He'd separate their bodies. He'd take an ant and he'd take tweezers and he would pull the back end of an ant off just to see how long it would live without its back end. Its little butt end was pulled off. Or he'd pull a leg off to see how long an ant could walk with a broken leg or whatever. I mean, it's weird to watch how spiders can move around with legs missing. But now mad science is giving us more things to have nightmares about. Science created something called a necrobiotic gripper. Now, what's a necrobiotic gripper, you ask? Well, dead spiders are being used for gripping small items like a claw that picks up a stuffed animal in an arcade. So back in 2019, researchers at Yale, they came across a dead spider curled up in the lab, and so they decided they wanted to play with it. They were curious as to why spiders curl up after they die. And so then the scientists learned that spiders or arachnids have what is effectively a hydraulic pressure system that controls their limbs. And so they wanted to create these necrobiotic grippers. And the way they do it is they would tap into the internal valves of the spider's hydraulic chamber with a needle. And they'd seal it with super glue. And then they attached a handheld syringe to the other end of the needle. And so they would deliver a small amount of air through the syringe. And when they would do that, the spider's legs would open up, straight out, open up, straight out. And then what they would do is they would hold the spider over an area where they want to pick up a small item, like out of a computer, some sort of a chip or something, a really small chip. And so they would blow in the air, and the legs would open up. And then they close the spider's legs like an arcade claw machine. And so the scientists, for some odd reason, say this is very effective. And they were saying that dead spiders can lift 130% of their own body weight, with at least one of the ex-spiders, dead spiders, lasting up to 1,000 open-close cycles. So what they're really doing is they're puppeteering a dead spider. They're animating the dead in a nightmarish way. It's similar to what Giovanni Aldini did when he animated dead bodies back in the 1800s. He would jolt them with electricity, take them on tour, like he'd take cats and dogs and animals, and he would use something called galvanism, where he would use electroshock to make these creatures look like they're alive. And so it would be like puppeteering with electromagnetic energies, just zapping a cat or a dog or even a human. He had a hanged man that they brought in, and his eyes would roll back in the back of his head, and then he'd jump and he'd frolic around like a fish because they would like jolt him with electricity. And this is what inspired frogs' legs that were animated with electroshocks. It was what inspired Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein. Playing with the dead is something that, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think it's the closest thing you can get to necrophilia, playing with the dead, preying on the dead, reanimating them for scientific reasons or for further use of organs or other body parts. It's like, it's really scary sorcery. Well, it was recently reported in the New York Times that a group of Yale scientists injected the bodies of dead pigs with a new concoction that brought the organs of dead animals back to partial level life. The pigs had been dead for more than an hour. No blood circulating, no brain waves, just dead. But when the scientists coupled their new concoction with a machine to start the beast's hearts pumping again, things changed considerably. The New York Times said this, quote, "Although the pigs were not considered conscious in any way, their seemingly dead cells revived. Their hearts began to beat as a solution, which the scientists called Organ X, circulated in their veins and arteries. Cells in their organs, including the heart, liver, and kidneys and brain, were functioning again, and the animals never got stiff like a typical dead pig. In contrast, the scientists used a machine to pump regular blood through the bodies of other pigs, and this control group, having been dead for the same period of time, was an experimental group, and the results did not revive their organs in the least. So the control pigs remained entirely dead, their bodies and organs, though, still disintegrating. But the others, body not disintegrating, organs not disintegrating, and the researchers say their goals are to one day increase the supply of human organs for transplant by allowing doctors to obtain viable organs long after death. They're hoping their technology might be used to prevent severe damage to hearts or other body parts by keeping the body parts animated and alive like they animate the pigs." I mean, think of this. This is a horrific thing. This is Dr. Frankenstein stuff right here. Using electronic energies and other things to animate these bodies. They're somewhat dead, but not quite dead yet. It's kind of a creepy way to look at it. 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. I'm Clegg Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back. You're listening to Ground Zero. I'm Clegg Lewis. Something a little scary for tonight. I was going to go to Lisa, and she hung up. Okay, well, then I don't have to go to Lisa now. I tell you what I want to do, though. I want to share something with you. When I talk about these subjects, about death and and we were having a discussion about, is this necromancy or necrophilia? Or it's not necrophilia, because what? Necrophilia is having sex with the dead, right? And necromancy is using the dead but it's neither. It's just playing with dead bodies. It's playing with dead pigs. It's playing with dead spiders. It reminds me of that Alice Cooper song. What is it? It's one that he won't sing anymore. It's because it's really creepy. It's called "I Love the Dead." We play it at Halloween all the time. Just a creepy song. I love the dead before they're cold. It says, I think it's from $1 Billion Babies. The album $1 Billion Babies, Alice Cooper, I love the dead. He did, I love the dead before they're cold. Nothing. I don't see anything. They have no life. But I'm able to, put air into a spider and watch it grip things. Oh my God, it's just so gross. Anyway, let's go to Chris in Washington. Hey, Chris, you're on Ground Zero.
Hey, yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking about the pig organs before the break. A couple of years ago at my doctor, he was mentioning that they're increasing the amount of pig hearts they can put in as transplants and how people could maybe live up to like 150 years old. And I said, okay, well, hold on a second. What are the ethical implications of this? Not just the scientific part, but like, what are we going to do about pensions or economic factors? You look at Japan's aging population where they don't have a new generation popping up, and you have everyone supporting all these very old people who can't do anything. Like, are we going to have that around the world?
Well, they give us
just people living in almost zombie-like states. If we have the hearts that we can do, how are we going to replace the brain matter? Like, what's the quality of life there?
Well, that's next.
Simply because we can do something,
that's next,
does not mean that we should do something.
Well, yeah, that's the old saying that everybody says. But if you have somebody that is young in your life and is laying there on their deathbed, and you're saying, is there any way we can save them? I say, well, we can give them a heart transplant, but it'll be a pig's heart. Are you going to freak out and go no and let them die? Or are you going to give them the pig's heart? Or if they say, well, there's an experiment we can do where we can refire the brain's neurons. It'll be a slow, arduous process, and they will have to relearn to speak. They will have to relearn to read again and everything. I mean, is that something that we're going to do? I mean, this type of stuff is creepy. I mean, it really is creepy, but is it something that you'd be willing to do? I mean, animating pig parts right now, keeping them alive so that they can make the transplants of people. I mean, we already use pig insulin. We already use insulin from pigs, I guess, for people who use insulin. So, I mean, that's the next step, right? Being able to transfer animal parts into human parts.
Yeah, I don't know if any of your listeners or you watched the Black Mirror series on Netflix, but one of their things is putting consciousness in digital archives so people can basically live on and whatever. And so there's one episode where a man was tortured, or he was given the death penalty by electrocution. And so they kept his conscious torment in this simulation system so people could come pull the lever and experience them. Like, okay, well, we say pig hearts today. Where is this going to end up? That's always a thing for me. I'm a slippery slope kind of guy, but I have to understand.
Would you refuse, if you were dying, would you refuse a pig heart?
Oh, absolutely I would. Yes.
You would refuse. Yeah. You would refuse a pig heart.
Well, it would depend on how old I was. If I was like in my 80s, just let me go. But if it was next year when I turned 36, we can try out the pig heart. Okay. But I don't think I would do it to extend my life past what I would consider an an unnatural age.
Okay. Well, just wanted to know because I mean, a lot of people, they get all caught up and they're like, "Oh, I'd never do that." Well, you don't know what you're going to do when you're laying there on your deathbed. You don't know what you're going to do. You can say either, "Yeah, I'm going to die," or
35-year-old man. So perhaps when I get to that point, maybe.
Right. Exactly. But, okay.
I just think there's a lot of ethical implications to consider.
Definitely so. Chris, thank you for the call. Yeah, it's true. I mean, there are a lot of moral things that we need to talk about here. Pigs were not considered conscious in any way. Their seemingly dead cells revived. Their hearts began to beat as a solution, which the scientists called Organex, circulated in their veins and arteries. Cells in their organs, including the heart, liver, kidneys, and brain, were functioning again, and the animals never got stiff like a typical dead pig. So they went and they pumped blood into another group of pigs, and they ended up disintegrating. But with this Organex, this special sludge they put in the body, I guess they were able to make the pigs' insides work. So what they want to do is they want to increase the supply of human organs for transplant. So they're trying it in pigs. It's working for pigs. So they can take the dead human now and they can keep the body parts alive while the body experiences brain death. And they're saying that they hope their technology might also be used to prevent severe damage to hearts after a devastating heart attack or brains after a major stroke. Now, that's something I can think about here is that, they can keep the heart alive long enough to find out what's wrong with it. It's a drug. It's called Organex. They want to use it on humans. They've used it on pigs. It seems to be working. But this whole discussion is fraught with ethical questions, as was said earlier. I mean, we have to answer a lot of these ethical questions before we even begin the idea of using these drugs, before we even think about firing air into a body and making it a grabber or what you want to call it, a necrobiotic grabber or whatever. I mean, just the idea that drugs can be used to bring humans back from death in whatever fashion and whatever kind of, I mean, they still don't know what that means, what kind of life they're bringing back, but they're keeping the body alive enough to keep the organs intact. The Organex has nerve blockers in its mixture that are meant to stop the firing of neurons in the brain. So the minute they give it to you, your brain stops firing, but your body seems to be intact. The researchers said that the revived pigs still had muscle movement. And some even experienced head jerking. So it's like that animation stuff with the electricity, right? They put that sludge in the body, the pig's head starts jerking around, but the body parts remain alive. God, just seeing that being done to a human being just terrifies me. Nerve blockers carrying out they just to stop the firing of neurons in the brain so they can take the body parts out. But see, what if the drug is altered to exclude ingredients that don't keep the brain from firing neurons? I mean, would that make the brain active again? Would that mean the subject is conscious and alive again? I mean, how would this drug work on humans that have died, but their organs can benefit others? When is it okay to use the drug? When is it okay to say no? When is it? I mean, who's going to give the go-ahead to use this drug to keep body parts alive for someone else? A lot of ethical questions here. Now we can bring body parts back to life and humans in the process, reanimating them. 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. This is what nightmares are made of. Stand by. We got more to come right here on Ground Zero. Don't go away. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. A nightmare of a show tonight. I swear I'm going to have nightmares after I talk about all this tonight. I was having nightmares when I first was reading this. Researchers have restored circulation and cellular activity in the vital organs of pigs, such as heart and brain, 1 hour after the animals died. The research challenges the idea of cardiac death, which occurs when blood circulation and oxygenation stops. It's irreversible and raises ethical questions about what exactly is the definition of death. The work follows a 2019 experiment that was basically carried out by scientists in which they revived disembodied brains of pigs. In the work that was published At the beginning of this month in Nature, actually it was the 3rd where it was published, researchers connected pigs that had been dead for 1 hour to a system called Organex that pumped a blood substitute throughout the animals' bodies. The solution containing the animal's blood and 13 compounds, such as anticoagulants, slowed the decomposition process of the bodies and quickly restored some organ function, such as heart contraction and activity in the liver and kidneys. Although Organex helped to preserve the integrity of some brain tissue, researchers did not observe any coordinated brain activity that would indicate the animals had regained any consciousness or sentience. Looking at a 2019 paper that I've been going over a lot of this. It's just terrifying. It's a boon to science, but it's terrifying. The study is likely to reinvigorate a debate about just what exactly the definition of death is and the ethics of post-mortem organ donation. Guy by the name of Nadad Sistan, who's a Yale neuroscientist, member of the team that did this, he predicted that these experiments might work in the light of the 2019 pig brain study because the brain is the organ most susceptible to oxygen deprivation. If you can regain some function in a dead pig brain, you can do it in other organs, according to him. So to find out, he and his co-authors modified the BrainX solution, and the technique used in that study, BrainX was tailored for a specific organ, the brain, but they had to find a common denominator that works for all organs of the body. Thus, they created this concoction known as Organex. So in the Organex solution, in the concoction, the researchers included compounds that would suppress blood clotting in the immune system, which is more active elsewhere in the body than in the brain. So they obtained pigs from a local farm breeder and monitored them for 3 days before sedating them and putting them on a ventilator and inducing cardiac arrest by delivering a shock to their hearts. After confirming a lack of pulse, the researchers removed the animals from the ventilators. 1 hour after the pigs died, the team restarted the ventilators and anesthesia. Some of the pigs were then attached to the Organex system. Others received no treatment or were hooked up to a extracorporeal membrane. It's an ECMO, oxygenation. It's called extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. That's ECMO or ECMO. It was a machine that they hooked them up to, which some hospitals they use as a last-ditch effort to supply oxygen and remove carbon dioxide from the body to try to keep the body alive. After 6 hours, the researchers noticed that circulation had restarted much more effectively in pigs that had received the Organex solution than in those that had received the ECMO or no treatment. Oxygen had begun flowing to tissues all over the bodies of the Organex animals, and a heart scan detected some electrical activity and contraction in the heart, but the heart had not fully restarted, and it's unclear what exactly it was doing in those animals, or what it was doing to the animals as it was trying to beat. The researchers also noticed that the livers of the Organex pigs produced much more of a protein called albumin than did the livers of pigs in the other groups. And cells in each of the vital organs of these Organex pigs responded to glucose much more than did the animals in other groups, suggesting that the treatment had re-kickstarted metabolism. The findings are striking given how quickly after death decomposition begins, and they were able to avoid decomposition. The researchers found that more genes responsible for cellular function and repair were active across all major organs in the Organex groups compared to the ECMO or the ones that received no treatment at all. So what's really creepy, though, is thinking about the involuntary movements that the pigs had while they were being reanimated. And then, of course, is hearing the stories of the pigs having involuntary jerking of their heads and neck and torso. What they did is they gave them an injection of contrast dye. And that way they could see, well, the scientists need to visualize how the animals' brains were functioning following the treatment. And so when they put that in there, the pigs would violently rock their heads around, jerking their heads back and forth, neck, torso. No word of whether or not they were screaming. But I'm sure that happened too. But of course, they don't tell you why they were moving, noting that it's unlikely that the impulses were in the brain. It was just there was lack of electrical activity. There was possible the movement was in the spinal cord, and usually after death, sometimes the spinal cord functions independently of the brain, even though the brain isn't working. So during the cellular restoration, you were seeing these pigs jerking around, and it really didn't matter. The organs were still alive. The pigs didn't feel anything in the brain, so they say. But this is it's very fascinating and creepy all in the same breath here. 503-225-0860. It's 503-225-0860. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back. All this talk about keeping pigs alive hours after they've passed, or keeping their body parts alive, no telling what they're doing with the brain. All we know is the head jerks back and forth, and it's like the body seems to be jolting back and forth. But we all argue politically about when life begins. That's why we have the abortion debate. We have the abortion debate. When is a life a life? So now this brings up another topic. When is a death considered really dead? Because now it's undetermined what exactly death is. Now that they've done this, you realize this. The clinical death, the idea of clinical death is changing, which means there's always an option after an hour of death to be revived again. So how does this fare with people who say they've gone to the other side and have been to the other side, and then an hour later they could be brought back? I mean, how does this work out? I mean, it's kind of creepy to think about, right? And that's why, you know, I had a guy named Joe writes me. He says, necromancy is always taboo from whence it began. It's a no-no. A lot of different sections of history. Raising the dead is also an abomination of man, evil. These arts are one of the darkest, if not the darkest, of magic. Always forbidden in the circles of magic from where I've known. So now we know for sure these scientists are practicing certain ritualistic magic. The Nazis were definitely into this. So many stories from soldiers that were captured and were supposedly awaiting their fates in part of those experiments. So Joe thinks that this is Nazi science. What do you think this is? This is some really creepy stuff when you think about it. Anywhere from animating body parts that they did back at the sideshows of the 1800s that inspired Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, to animating spiders using air to make them necrobiotic grabbers, and now the animation of pigs using something called Organex, which is some sludge they pump into the body to make the pigs stay alive. Let's go to Fred in Illinois. Hey, Fred, you're on Ground Zero.
Clyde, this is your evil brother in the East.
What's up, man?
Hey, I wanted to connect with you on part of that. An aspect of that is, for myself, I've had a couple of kidney transplants in my lifetime, and I was experiencing weird dreams and changes in my body, and I went to my nephrologist, and he's like, well, you're experiencing what they call a cellular memory. And it's like, you have to tell me more about this, you know. And I have vivid dreams. I was actually, my first transplant came from a 14-year-old girl who had passed away. And I just had these reoccurring memories, but odd. And then I had a second transplant in a whole different experience.
Right.
Now I had a sister-in-law. She had pig valves put in her heart, and she would tell me that she would just have the weirdest food cravings to eat, you know, just things. So
there was a dancer. I can't remember her name, but I remember talking about it a long time ago. This is dancer, and she had open heart surgery. She got a heart transplant, believe it or not, from a man who apparently had a lot of habits he didn't tell anybody about.
Yes.
They put the heart in this dancer, and apparently a healthy heart, but the guy loved cigars and he loved eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. and so this poor dancer started getting cravings for cigars and Kentucky Fried Chicken.
I believe it, man. I have now, from out of nowhere, just a craving for Captain Crunch. So.
I'll tell you. Anyway, it's creepy, really creepy. Just
it
creepy.
Is, yeah. and you know, then if we go back to that, the nanobot kind of thing, we can stick them on cells. How you know, can they reprogram a cell? And
sure.
and they put that organ into you, and wow, you're
cell programming, man. That's the future.
You've already been reprogrammed in certain ways.
Yeah. Well, the whole topic tonight just gave me the creeps when I was thinking about it. But Fred, thank you. It's just it's more than being a zombie. It's the idea that we don't know now when death truly happens. We'll have a doctor declare you dead because of brain. You don't, your brain's not functioning, cardiac death because the whole heart's not functioning. But if we get the right stuff in you in time, we can revitalize your organs and maybe even revitalize your brain. Who knows? Let's go to Carlos in California. Hey, Carlos, you're on Ground Zero.
Good evening, Clyde. Well, there's accounts in Haiti of zombies. There's people that have seen zombies, and they said that they're dead people that reanimated through sorcery. I think they mentioned voodoo. I'm not really sure if they mentioned voodoo, but through sorcery, they're reanimated. And there's, I've heard a couple of accounts of people saying, I've seen the zombies. So, there's probably a multiplicity of ways eventually that will be used to reanimate dead people. I mean, this is not over yet,
it's like, where do they get, I don't know, it's like, death has always been the final word on everything. But now it's not the final word anymore. If scientists are playing around with dead bodies, dead pigs in this case, reviving them, animating them, and it's like, just going back to Giovanni Aldini and what he did back in the 1800s with sideshows. He was animating criminals who were dead, having their bodies dance around with their eyes rolled back into their heads. That's horrific. And so, like I said, have you ever been to one of those plastinated body displays at museums? Have you ever been to one of those?
No, I never have.
Oh, they're next time one comes, they call it like it's called Bodies, or I can't remember. It's just the Bodies exhibit or whatever. You go there, and it's the creepiest experience because it's like going into a mortuary where they've taken the skin off bodies and they put them on display. And of course they're dead, but they've found a way to what is known as plastinate the body. Meaning that it's plastic, but it's made from the dead. They take the bodies and dry them out, and then use solutions to plastinate them. It's like a form of taxidermy. So that when you go into the display, you get to see the human body in its form, and even the bones and everything else. It's really creepy. It's an anatomy type of museum display that's really lifelike.
Well, what I wonder is that concept of reanimating dead bodies. Now, does that emanate from sources that want to deny God or refute his work? I mean, the Frankists, which is where the name Frankenstein comes, because they did, I think they did try to do some with
it's called galvanism. It's called galvanism. It's the idea of a golem that's reanimated with electricity. That's why Frankenstein is man of stone. It's you take the stone man or the man made of clay, and you reanimate him with electricity to make him whole again.
Well, the Frankists were a diabolical sect, so I believe the concept came from sources that really want to refute God's natural process.
Well, see, again, it goes back to the idea. Mengele had the same idea as well. So are we deciding now that we're going to do experiments that Mengele did, and is this ethical to be doing these types of experiments on pigs and eventually on humans, do you think? Or is it bad because it's Mengele? I mean, it's creepy.
Really creepy. Well, Mengele, from what I understand, was the concept of doing mind control. MK Ultra really came from Mengele.
Yeah.
From the book that I'm reading about David Livingstone.
But Mengele also had a collection of eyeballs, which was really creepy. He had them on his wall. Because for some reason, he'd like to collect eyeballs. And then, see, that's the thing, is these hideous mad scientists. Carlos, thanks for the call. These hideous mad scientists that do these things. And, of course, they don't see themselves doing anything bad. That's up to the public to decide. That's why I'm putting this before you. We have a hard time with conception. We argue about it politically. What about the idea of death? Do you think that will eventually be argued about politically as well, now that we have found ways to animate corpses, animate pigs, eventually animating humans? I mean, when does death really happen? 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. What are your thoughts on that? It digs deep, doesn't it, into the psyche? 503-225-0860. Back with more Ground Zero. Don't go away. Clyde Lewis. And this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 503-225-0860. It's 503-225-0860. I think many of us who are in our 50s, late 50s, maybe even our 40s, I don't know. There is a time in all of our lives where we reach a certain age and we start feeling as though we're falling apart. And that's where I tell you that age is an unfair mission creep. Eventually, with age, everything can become a catastrophic dysfunction. Everything, all at once. Every part of your body seems to be falling apart at once. Our mitochondria sputter. Our endocrine system sags. Our DNA snaps. Our sight and hearing and strength diminish. Our arteries clog. Our brains fog. And we falter. We seize. We fail. We die. And that's the end of it. Every research breakthrough, every announcement of a master key that we can turn to reverse all that has been followed by setbacks and confusion. Now, it's no secret that I take life-saving pharmaceutical pills. I take supplements. And what that does is it slows down the inevitable. It slows down the process. It works a lot, but sometimes I feel like they slow down the inevitable. It's like I want to live forever and I'm going to die trying. 150,000 people die every day. Most check out well before what is considered the maximum age of 115, and some of them could afford to keep going far longer if only science could make it happen. It's always been a scientific endeavor to combat aging. The urge to combat aging, especially among the rich, is an old one. But new technological breakthroughs can make the prospects seem tantalizingly close. There are now millionaires. There are millionaires that are hell-bent on an immortality investment where they seek the sorcerer's stone or they hire the right alchemist to get the job done. Investing in biotech breakthroughs is one way the super rich are trying to stay young and healthy indefinitely. Others in the community are settling for cryogenic freezing in the hopes that they can be thawed once regenerative science is sufficiently advanced. Bank of America's analysts have been saying that companies focused on immortality and longevity, extending the human lifespan as much as possible, are going to grow in the coming years, with the market expected to be worth $600 billion by the year 2025. Many new scientific breakthroughs sound horrifying because, well, lately, they've been dealing with how science has been playing with the dead. They've been playing with dead things, whether it be reanimating the corpse of a spider to be used as a necrobiotic grabber, or in this case, what we've been talking about is how researchers have restored circulation and cellular activity in the vital organs of pigs, like their heart and brain. And they have done this 1 hour after the animals have died or been clinically pronounced dead. And this research challenges the idea that cardiac death, which basically occurs when blood circulation oxygenation stops in the body, it challenges the idea of cardiac death and the idea that it's irreversible. But if we are to show that cardiac death is reversible, this raises some ethical questions about what really is death. There was these experiments that were done in 2019 about brain dead and revived disembodied brains of pigs and how they were able to revive the pigs. Well, there's another work that was published August 3rd where researchers connected pigs that had been dead for 1 hour to a system called OrganX, which pumped a blood substitute throughout the animals' bodies. The solution, or the concoction, contained the animal's blood and 13 compounds such as anticoagulants. It slowed the decomposition of the bodies and quickly restored some organ functions such as heart contraction and activity in the liver and kidneys. Although OrganX helped to preserve the integrity of some brain tissue, researchers didn't observe any coordinated brain activity that would indicate the animals had regained any consciousness or sentience. The only creepy thing that I think about when they're talking about this experiment is that the pigs would slam their heads around, knock their heads around, and ride their bodies around when they were getting reanimated. Now, of course, this is an amazing breakthrough, considering how fast the body starts decaying after death, but it's also terrifying to think about. See, the researchers say that their goals are to one day increase the supply of human organs for transplant by allowing doctors to obtain viable organs long after death. And they say they hope that their technology might also be used to prevent severe damage to hearts after a devastating heart attack or devastating something that may devastate a brain like a stroke. They want to prevent that. So they hope to eventually use the drug on humans to keep these vital organs alive while they're going through a dying process. So this whole discussion, not only is it's creepy because we're dealing with some Frankenstein science, but it is also fraught with ethical questions that must be answered before we begin using drugs that can seemingly bring humans back from the dead in whatever fashion they decide to bring them back from the dead. This Organix stuff, now they say that it has nerve blockers in its mixture that are meant to stop the firing of neurons in the brain, and this is according to the New York Times. And even with that, the researchers said that the revived pigs still had muscle movement, head jerking. Like I said, the idea of the head moving around, jerking back and forth. But what if the drug is altered to exclude ingredients that don't keep the brain from firing neurons? Would that make the brain active again if they used it? Would that mean the subject is conscious and alive again? But how is this drug going to work on humans who have died? And would would it benefit them to survive or benefit others with organs? I mean, when do we decide that it's okay to use this drug to revitalize the organs? I mean, I know no matter what country you're in, usually many countries, a lot of countries, require a human to be dead for at least 2 hours before organs can be harvested. But if this drug is used, is the person still alive and are removing organs from a live body? How do we know they aren't alive or dead? We don't. And if they're alive, are we harvesting organs from somebody who's living? These are, I know these are really weird questions, but this is a weird topic. I mean, these are really extreme, complex moral questions. I mean, can we reverse death with experiments like this? And if so, what does that mean? What does it mean? 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. There's some very interesting stuff going on in the world, and it's really creepy, and we'll be back with more. Don't go away. There's always been that, I guess, cliche. I don't know if it's cliche. It's always used by liberals to describe the abortion argument. They always say conservatives care more about a baby when it's in the womb than when it's out. And then after that, they don't care about how it lives or how it dies. Well, guess what, guys? This is adding, I think, some credence to that. Because we have a lot of moral questions here to be asked. And a lot of people, I don't think, know how to deal with the uncanny valley and future shock, because this is some really eerie stuff. Because, like I say, it's similar to the discussion over abortion, where you ask, what is life? People say, well, when does life begin? Well, some say it begins at conception. Others have different ideas of when life begins. But now the controversy is, when does death begin? Or when is death the final word? Is death the finality that we all think it is? A lot of controversy with life and death questions, because this is about mad science. Again, they're eliminating all arguments about who controls life and who controls death in the world. So we have to decide how far is too far when it comes to reviving a body. Or do we just let it happen because this is what God wants? I mean, you have to ask yourself, again, it reminds me of that Lionel at Will speech, where he said that 40 years ago, a man was mad because of anesthesia. Then 40 years, they were able to work on the human brain. Now you can hold a beating heart in your hand. No one says that it's horrifying, because they do it with open heart surgery. They do all these things that sound horrific, but they are there to save lives. And if we're going to be able to reanimate pigs and eventually humans to keep their organs at least alive or harvestable, what is the controversy? How far is too far? How far do we say is mad science as opposed to sound science? I mean, like I say, researchers have created Well, I was reading the other day that researchers had created mouse embryos out of stem cells. And what that does is it removes the need for sperm, eggs, or even a womb. They are grown to half the entire gestation period, at which point they had all their organ progenitors, including a beating heart, okay, without a womb. They have a beating heart. They have everything. So this tech could eventually be used to grow organs for a transplant. It could easily be used to grow babies without mothers and without wombs. Do we still have the same idea with what's a life if a life is made outside the womb? I mean, if there's a heartbeat detected, if it's done in a factory somewhere, if it's done in a laboratory somewhere, does it still apply? Does the life apply? The right to life? There was a new study from researchers at the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, built on two branches of the team's previous research. The first involved reprogramming stem cells into what is called the naive state that allows them to differentiate into all other cells, including other stem cells. The other work focused on developing a device that could grow embryos more effectively outside the womb. So combining the two techniques, this team in Israel has now grown some of the most advanced synthetic mouse embryos ever. They started with naive mouse stem cells, which had been cultured in a petri dish for several years, and then they were separated into three groups that would play key roles in the embryo development. One group contained the cells that would develop into embryonic organs. The other two were treated with master regulator genes of extra embryonic tissues, a placenta, and a yolk sac. So we had a placenta for one group and a yolk sac for another. The three types of cells were then mixed together in the artificial womb, which carefully controls pressure and oxygen exchange and gently moves the beakers around to simulate natural nutrition flow or nutrient flow from a mother, but the mother isn't existent. So once inside, the three types of cells all clump together to form aggregates, which had the potential to develop into embryo-like structures. Now, as you'd expect, the vast majority failed at the stage, with only 0.5% or 50 out of about 10,000 successfully developing further. But there were a lucky few. It started to form spheres of cells. Eventually, they made elongated structures resembling natural embryos, complete with placentas and yolk sacs. They were allowed to develop for over 8 days, which is almost half of the mouse's gestation period, by which point they were fully formed. All the early progenitors of organs were there: beating heart, blood stem cell circulation, a well-shaped brain, an intestinal tract, and the beginnings of a spinal column. So now we have another problem, and that is, do we hold life sacred even if it's not made in the womb? I mean, if we have babies and embryos somewhere in a artificial womb, do we reject that too? We're learning to create embryos outside the womb. We're learning to make life longer. So it's always been the idea of death, negative reality, nothingness, darkness. It penetrates us with this idea that being alive is better than being dead. But there's a lot of knowledge that coincides with our ignorance, our lives, our deaths, the truth, the untruth, common sense, discernment. But we face new trials and questions about what is life. We face questions on whether or not somebody in a high place has control of your life. How far are you going to go to protect life, whether it be in the womb or someone who's on their deathbed? How do we keep them living? Is it okay to keep them living, or is it wrong to keep them living? This is why I always lament the fact that many of our politicians act as if they're still living in the 20th century. They would rather rally around old push-button issues and indulge in self-aggrandizement than taking on issues that are going to shape our future. Like, what are we going to do when we're able to keep people alive indefinitely to harvest their organs? Is that right? What are we going to do when we start allowing ourselves to make babies in places with artificial wombs? Are they still as sacred as those that are born in a regular mother? Because I can tell you now, researchers have predicted that they're going to have ready for the market, and this is the truth, They will have ethically sound creations of designer babies ready in the early stages later this year. Designer babies are ready to pop onto the scene later this year. And it's expected to spark a revolution of a new wave of genetic modification of humans. And this is it's going to be rapidly growing. The trend is going to grow. And like it or not, it's going to continue to move exponentially into our nebulous future. And once again, you now have a responsibility to be ready for those philosophical challenges that face us in the not-too-distant future. And there's no more room for hate or misunderstanding. It is time for us to open our minds, and we need to learn about uncomfortable things and try to cope with the abrupt changes that come with future shock. It's weird. I mean, Mary Elizabeth Williams, she writes for Salon, okay? She admitted that everyone instinctively knows a human fetus at every level is human life. But you know what she said? She said, so what? So what? And that's the thing. It's becoming an anti-moral argument. Life is just a clump of cells at any stage, and what we do with these cells is entirely up to our discretion. So is human life a utilitarian concept? I mean, we have this anti-moral lens where life isn't special. There's no sanctity, there's no meaning, from abortion to death. So we need to have this argument. We need to have this discussion. It's important that we have this discussion. It's larger than the mere concept of whether or not we can maintain an organ's function past death. We're fighting to define, we need to define what human life is. Is it sacred? Is it something that we can manipulate at a whim? Those are the questions. If you have any answers, I'd like to hear from you. 503-225-0860. It's 503-225-0860. Don't go away. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. The definition of death is now becoming more nebulous, just like the definition of conception. It'll be an argument in the future because of experiments that are being carried out by Yale University with pigs, reanimating their body parts, and they're planning on doing it with humans, and who knows how many lives they'll save in doing it, but it's going to take a lot, and a lot of ethical questions, moral questions to be asked as this is underway right now. Let's go to Derek in Massachusetts. Hi, Derek. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde. A wild show tonight. Crazy stuff.
Thank you.
I just got to say, weaving robot spiders come out here. You know, geez Louise. With the Organ X thing, you keep calling it a sludge, so it's just reminding me, it's just giving me weird Lovecraftian black goo reanimator type vibes.
Well, see, I don't know what it is, but it just sounds to me like a bunch of coagulant, anticoagulant sludge that they put in the body that's supposed to, it'll cool it down and then cause it to just go, keep it from deteriorating, because the body just immediately starts decaying after death.
Exactly. And weird that it's 13 chemicals that they have in the concoction too.
Definitely.
And it's always Yale, seemingly, that's doing these weird pig organ, pig reanimation type stuff, and they have skull and bones. And you mentioned Mangala collecting the eyeballs, and they have their weird skull fetish. Perhaps they have some kind of weird resurrection thing that they're driving after here, you know. But as far as like the reanimation thing, did you ever watch Invincible, the animated show on Amazon?
I watched it a while ago. I think that's the animated show with the
Robert Kirkman. It's like a really violent one.
Like it's very violent. Yeah, huh?
Yeah. There's one small part of it where like the military is trying to figure out a way to like stop their version of Superman, basically. And one of them is they take dead soldiers and they reanimate these dead soldiers and make them like half cyborg, half zombie things to basically quote like serve their country from beyond the grave, pretty much.
Right.
So it makes me think like beyond just resurrecting the human consciousness, and that's a whole slippery slope, but just body autonomy after death. Like, do they have a right, or does somebody else have the right to your physical vessel, even though you might not be in it? Like, we don't really know the connection between the soul and the body and that kind of stuff. So, is there a possible military application for you? Like, are you going to sign a lifetime or beyond lifetime contract?
Well, see, this is a big thing. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, you bring up a very excellent point. And that is, look, if you're to this point in your life where, like, you know, let's say you're in your late 30s, as was said earlier, late 30s, you find out you're dying, you're going to die. And they come in and they say, well, we have something called Organ X that we want to ask if we can put that in your body, and that will, we'll put that in your body an hour after you die, and we'll see how that works out. And if you come back, are you okay with that? Are you okay with us using this to stop your brain death and your circulatory death?
Yeah.
Would you say yes to that? I think many people would say yes to that. Although, what does it mean? What does it mean then that death is not something that's clear or well defined anymore? Is it something that perhaps we can get a second chance an hour or two after we die if they put this stuff in our bodies? That's the big question.
For sure. I mean, also, it could get into weird, like, being trapped almost in your physical body. Like, what if you're in jail and you're sentenced to, like, 10 life sentences? Now, can they force you to serve out all those 10 life sentences by keep bringing you back after you die? Or what if your family, or what if you're in, like, a ton of debt? And they're like, no, you can't get away with all this debt just by dying. And, like, some dystopia world where Amazon just has a bunch of, like, you just leash your body out to Amazon as some zombie worker. Like, you're not in the corpse anymore, but just your body is not being put in the grave. It's not being crematized or whatever. It has to work for Bezos or something like that.
Yeah, it's just making a jump from brain to brain to brain. But it's like on your deathbed, you want to live. At least many people want to live, and many people don't want to see their parents die. They don't want to see people. And so, what is going to motivate them to say, okay, we're willing to try this new product to get the body to stay alive, or we want to use this product to keep their organs going so somebody else can take advantage of the organs. It's just a weird, it's a weird concept.
It opens up a lot of, like, nightmarish, if you want to talk mad science, like, did you ever watch the OA on Netflix?
Yeah, a long time ago. The OA doesn't, I mean, they're not doing it anymore, I don't think.
No, it's over. But, like, the first season, they had this guy who was, like, kidnapping people, and like this, like, scientist who was basically, it's not a spoiler or anything, it's, like, very early in the show, but he's basically, like, drowning them and killing them for a short period of time and then bringing them back to life just to study the near-death experience and what they're seeing from beyond the grave. So take this reanimation fluid or whatever they got, and are we going to be able to, like, open up some mysteries when it comes to, like, where do you go after you die? Are they going to intentionally not kill people to bring them back to figure out?
I mean, they call time travelers chrononauts. What they call them? What they call them? Necronauts, where the idea of necronauts, where you can go in and say, all right, I'm willing to do the test, put me into cardiac arrest, keep me dead for an hour. I want to see what it's like on the other side, and then bring me back with this oxygen type of material and animate me again. I mean, it's like flatliners, but in a more, I guess, slower setting, rather than cardiac arrest, then reviving. You can revive them like an hour or two later.
I mean, it's very occult too. Like, this is the initiation ritual of, like, every secret society on the planet throughout time. It's the resurrection ritual. It's some type of, like, fake death or real death, and then to go to the other side, catch a glimpse of the other side, and come back and tell the secrets, tell the mysteries of the other side. Wild show, Clyde. I'll let you go, but just crazy stuff.
And you're right. Derek's right. This is I guess you could say this is the beginning of what we could call alchemy. Remember we're talking about the alchemists and how they're working hard to try and make a new human? What about a human that can go from the other side to back here again and back and back and back and forth? And they can do this indefinitely with science. They will be able to die for maybe an hour or two, go to the other side, then come back after we're revived. Or maybe it'll prove there is no other side. Wouldn't that be terrifying? I mean, maybe this is one of the reasons why we're not supposed to play in the realms of the dead, but we seem to be doing it all the time. We seem to be doing it. Science seems to be doing it. And again, we need to argue when life begins and when life ends. I don't think anybody's ready for that. Because politically, it's not going to gel with people. It's just a strange world we live in. Think outside the box. 503-225-0860. That's 503-225-0860. A few lines are open. We're doing more calls coming up, so don't go away. Keep it here. 503-225-0860. We'll be back. We all remember that old nursery rhyme. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. You know, there was an original version of that. When Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. 80 men and 80 more could not make Humpty Dumpty where he was before. And then, of course, it remained the same. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. 80 men and 80 more cannot place Humpty Dumpty as he was before. So they're very different versions of Humpty Dumpty. That a very powerful character known as Humpty Dumpty fell off a wall and he broke, and the king's horses, the king's men could not bring him back again. But mad science is now in the business of putting Humpty Dumpty back together again with cells, putting them back together again. They're creating a real-life Frankenstein's monster. They're casting legions of demons into pigs, bringing them back to life. Well, not literally, but I think we can all see the macabre metaphor for what it is and what it's going to mean for the future of mankind. It is a terrifying idea. And in fact, I'm sure tonight those who listen may have nightmares about this very, very thing. Let's go to Walter in Wisconsin. Hi, Walter. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde, man, all this talk about death and resurrection, it put me in mind of the biblical prophecy and the revelation about the beast or the Antichrist being struck dead with a head wound for 3 days and then being resurrected, So that's kind of a medical plausibility now. Kind of takes the supernatural, spiritual element out of it, and makes it very scientific. But
well, everything has a magical element in the beginning, Walter. Remember, they say don't mistake magic. Don't mistake magic for something that may be easily explained. It's hard to indistinguish magic from miracle. It's a difficult task. When science explains it or they try to prove it, then it takes the magic out of all of it, and it's happening. I think science is really trying to get rid of the magic that is behind some of the mysteries. This is why they're taking on UFOs. This is why they're taking on God. This is why they're taking on death. And I think eventually we're going to have a change of mind as to what exactly life and birth is, what birth is, what death is, what it means. See, right now we're all arguing over the same political stuff. And people, for some people, that's all they need in their politics. But the reality is that what do we do about death? How do we handle death? Well, we've been used to just putting people in boxes, throwing them in the ground, burning them in crematories. Now we turn them into mulch, or we turn them into compost. I mean, where's the dignity in that? There isn't any dignity in that as far as I'm concerned. But then the idea of if we keep a body alive long enough, are we able to eliminate its death by keeping the organs alive for a while until we figure out why the brain's not functioning? Or will the brain function if we give it more oxygen? See, now we have the power to reanimate and resurrect people 10, 15 times over, it seems.
Yes. Well, the idea is it's very profound. It's very thought-provoking. It's a great topic tonight.
Thank you, Walter. What were you saying?
I appreciate you guys.
Oh, I thank you so much, Walter. Thank you for calling the show. Let's go now to Sam in Florida. Hey, Sam, you're on Ground Zero. Hello, Sam.
Chance.
What? Who is this?
Chance.
Go ahead. You're on the air.
I'm sorry. I just going to mention that I think this all might kind of be tied together, like in a bigger picture. I don't know if you noticed the scientific study that came out last week about them being able to control fruit flies, movements and everything with electrical impulses.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that they've been able to do that, yeah.
And of course, the whole black goo thing, graphene oxide, what is that? It's an electrical conductor. And I'm always thinking that, it's going to be one of those things where maybe even like a weekend of Bernie situation. Maybe it's going on right now with Joe Biden. Who knows? Where they can inject them with this stuff that can. Are
you there, Sam? I think Sam has a bad connection. It seems that he has a bad connection. So we'll just drop the phone. Maybe he'll call back. I don't know. But see, going back, I remember when I was interested in mortuary science, and I wasn't clear reading about the definition of the clinically dead, because the doctors are the ones that have the final say as to what is dead and what isn't dead. Then, of course, the mortuary or the mortician has the He has the responsibility to clean up the mess, literally. But see, when you look at a cellular level now, we're able to look at a cellular level and wonder what the cells are doing hours after you go without a heartbeat. Are your tissues dying slowly? Do they give off some sort of a chemical where you're feeling as though your consciousness is leaving your body? And can that consciousness, again, be put into a box and kept like they do with Ghost in the Shell, being able to take a consciousness of some kind or all the data that would be consciousness and put it into a temporary place until you can get all your systems back online? I mean, how long can a body go with no blood circulation? How long are we able to keep up? I mean, can scientists learn anything about reviving people who've been dead for an even longer period? We know of people who have been in cold rivers and they've been brought back. I mean, these are a lot of things that when I get into this topic, I really, really have a lot of questions that preoccupy my mind of how scientists are revolutionizing the way they look at cardiac arrest, and they are moving the line. Literally, they're nudging forward the line between life and death, and it's all because we are now looking at cellular studies. This is why they're able to take embryos and raise them outside the womb, because of cellular studies. And so if we're to go into triage from a cellular level, that there are clear ways to tell whether the human cell is dead, and therefore your heart doesn't have to be, if it stops, doesn't have to be the end-all be-all, or if the brain stops, it's not the end-all be-all, because every cell we know of has membranes and they feed. And if they can find a way to feed the cells, then we won't see them deteriorate as badly when a body is technically dead. Because we know that when death happens, we see these barriers start weakening on the cells, and it all basically falls apart. So we have to feed the cells. We have to feed the organs. We have to feed the body. And if we do that, we can keep someone alive until they can find ways to reconfigure the brain, reconfigure the heart. And this is why they're doing this with these pigs. Gosh, it's an amazing topic. It's something that, I'm going to be thinking about for a while. And I hope you are thinking about it as well, because this definitely is going to open up the argument as to what is life and what is death. Tonight on Ground Zero, it's, my gosh, time's flown. We're about ready to go. So I just want to tell you guys, keep your mind where they can't get at it. You keep it at Ground Zero. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. Good night.